Hello, my name is Gabriel Meissner and you are watching RPTV News. Longtime Yonge Street Mission CEO, Angie Peters, launched her new book, Just Act, We Are the Solution to Poverty, at Daniel Spectrum, Slaight Hall on May 29, 2024. The book is a guide born from her own experiences with childhood poverty, the telecommunications field, and social impact. Angie shares insights and actionable steps to combat poverty. The book marks a pivotal moment in addressing societal challenges head-on. Now let's go to the book launch, and don't miss the opportunity to learn from Angie's expertise and dedication.
My name is Angie Peters. I am the Vice President of Philanthropy for the Yonge Street Mission, and I have the privilege of introducing two special guests this evening before we get started in our program. That's me. There it is. We are privileged to have with us this evening MPP Kristen Wong-Tam, who's here to share some words with us on behalf of the province. And so before we get started into our formal agenda, we'd love to invite the councillor or MPP up to the podium to share a few words. Thank you, Kristen.
Absolute honor to be here with all of you. This is a very special evening because, number one, not every day do you see someone of the caliber that we have who has written a book about a topic that plagues every single corner of the world. And the issue around poverty is one that is deeply personal for many individuals. But what I really found so remarkable about Angie Peters, when I first met her in 2013, when she first took the helm of Yonge Street Mission, was how bright-eyed and optimistic she was. And for those who have personal relationships with Angie, I think you will pretty much be able to attest to that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think it's important for us to recognize that, in the reference of the world when we talk about justice and inequality, it sometimes feels very infinite. You can't really grasp it in every single way. You know it's there. Sometimes you can sense it in ways that is much more tangible, and then there's ways that are intangible. And what I found really remarkable in my very first interaction with this remarkable thought leader was the fact that she was able to look at it from multiple dimensions, the subject matter of poverty. And it was also from a place that was not judgmental. And I didn't even know her story background at that time. I just thought, she's so innovative. And in a space when you're working with nonprofit leaders, it can be pretty punishing. More and more times we're asking for people, for organizations and people to do more with a lot less. And the needs in the community are greater than ever before. And in our community here in Toronto Centre, also known as the Downtown East in Toronto, those needs are magnified when we have three of the poorest postal codes in the entire city resting in our tiny little geographical riding. So we need leaders like Angie Peters, who has demonstrated that she doesn't just walk the walk, but she talks it as well, and she's doing everything she can to ensure that the information that she's learned, that she's brought forward in her life, is able to resonate and spill over. And it's very generous. I want to just say how generous Angie is with her knowledge and her sharing. And I've seen her captivate rooms with peers, other CEOs in the private sector as well, where she's able to demystify what the problems are. Now, when I got the copy of the book and I was able to just take a read, I had a better even understanding of the history and background of what formulated this remarkable woman. And I think that, her voice as she channels the stories of people that she serves with and she serves for, when it's amplified, people listen. And that's what I really value about this book, is asking us to act, to listen, but also to act. It's a bit of a call to action, I'd say. And the challenge for all of us at the end of the book is, what are you going to do about the eradication of poverty? Because sometimes it seems so big, and we are so small, that maybe it's left to others. But I felt that this book left us all with a message that was so clear that it's not for others to act upon. It is for us to act upon. Those of us who sit in public office, those who work in the nonprofit sector, those who work in business, there's a very special assignment for each and every single one of you. And for those who know Angie, you'll know that she will not be shy about giving you and I homework. Angie comes from the Christian faith, and as a member of the 2S LGBT community, I have a very conflicted relationship with religion, and some of you may as well. And as a young person, I didn't always feel like I belong in church, for some obvious reasons. But as I got older, what I found in churches, as they were also evolving and moving towards more progressive spaces and thought, was that I started to find myself coming back to church. And because Angie's action, her heart is led by her love of God, I wanted to share one of my favorite passages, and I had to dig it up because it hasn't been often that I picked up the Bible and said I wanted to, find the inspiration, but I wanted to leave us with some words. And who doesn't read their Bible and verse on their phone these days, right? So this is from the book of John, chapter 3, verse 17 to 18. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with action and in truth. I also want to share this particular verse, and this is applicable. I find that these stories are applicable. It doesn't matter which God you're worshiping or what faith you belong to or do not belong to. Oh, Wi-Fi just not good. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 9 and 10. When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time, or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. I am the Lord your God. And it reminds us that we share. It reminds us that we give. And it reminds us that we have the power, which Angie and the panelists will speak to take the action and understand that the solution is within our ability to enact upon, and that poverty does not have to be with us forever. And as Angie has so well demonstrated with her family experience, that it can be eradicated in one generation. So thank you very much, Angie, to the entire team of Yonge Street Mission. I recognize that when you put out a book like this, it's not because you're going to make, millions of dollars, although that would be nice. Oprah, if you're out there somewhere, please pick this up and give it the endorsement it deserves. But you're giving people a manifesto, and this is a wonderful blueprint. And this wonderful blueprint is now a gift for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for starting us out tonight with such an amazing message. One that echoes what you're going to hear tonight through the words of Angie Peters and the panelists, and of course our moderator, whom I'm really, really excited to introduce this evening. I'd like to introduce Anne-Marie Medwick. She is the host of CTV Your Morning, and she's an accomplished journalist who brings with her more than 2 decades of news and current affairs experience, and she's back home at CTV now, where she began her career as the host of the Gemini Award-winning investigative program 21C and reporter for CTV News. She is a Canadian Screen Award winner, a mother of triplets, and a passionate advocate for women and children's issues. Anne-Marie, it's a real honor to have you with us here tonight. Thank you so much. That's you. And over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. It is never lost on me that you can say Canadian Screen Award and there's silence, but you say mother of triplets and everyone goes, oh, wow. They're going to hate it, but 2/3 of my son of triplets are here tonight. My son Maximum, my daughter Annabelle are sitting here, and I'm so glad to get to not only meet my friend Angie, but also hear what's in the content of the book as well. Before we get on today's program, I just want to, actually I should tell you first of all how I know Angie. So I've known of Angie for a really long time, not just as a journalist and because of her work with Yonge Street Mission, but also friends of friends of friends. We have this Venn diagram of friends that keep overlapping, but somehow we never met. And then when we finally had a chance to meet, Kristen Montam said it so well. She's such a passionate person of what she loves and what she believes, and it just comes out of her, and she can't help it, and I'm glad that she can't help it. But what I got to know more recently about Angie is her personal story, her why she does what she does, why she wrote this book, and you're going to hear about all of that a little bit later this evening, not too far from now, actually. Before we get on with the rest of the program, though, we do want to take a moment to reflect on where we are located today and the work that we are doing on this land and the people that we serve here. And many of you would have seen MPP Sol Mamakwa speaking at Oji Cree at Queen's Park, a historic moment. So in that vein, we want to acknowledge that the land on which Yonge Street Mission serves, the people of Toronto, is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also want to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and by making this acknowledgement this evening, we are seeking to be allies to take part in the act of reconciliation, honoring the Creator, the land, and the Indigenous heritage of Toronto. So we have a few housekeeping rules before we get into the fun and the interesting things of talking to Angie and hearing from her. It is a 1-hour program. You are going to hear from Angie, you're going to hear from the book. We've put together this rich panel for a great discussion that you'll hear a little bit of, and then we're going to end with a fantastic spoken word presentation at the end. And then once we've wrapped up here, we're going to be out in the lobby and in the foyer, and you can have some nibbles and some conversation, ask some questions, and we hope that you do. Angie loves when people ask questions, because as I say to her, you can all if you haven't done it yet, we would encourage you to not only buy a book for yourself, but as we're saying, buy one for a friend. You guys can just act together, and we'll more about that in a few moments. And if you want to do bulk orders, which we strongly encourage, then you can do so after the event today. And to start things off, although MPP Montam did such a wonderful job of introducing Angie and her heart, I want to tell you a little bit about the logistics of Angie and the things that she's been involved in. She is known as an inspiring and a collaborative leader here in the city of Toronto in the social sector. Back in 2023, that's more than 2 decades ago, Angie, she left her executive role in telecom and she worked towards ending poverty. And she founded the ZOE Alliance. It's an international social enterprise before she joined Yonge Street Mission in 2013 as the president and the CEO. Then in 2022, I love this is right around the time that you and I became friends, Angie, she hosted a poverty hackathon that has since birthed a citywide multi-sector collaboration. It creates trust, it creates action, and it creates momentum to build communities where everybody can thrive. So why this book? Why take all that knowledge and all that experience and put it into a book, and why now? Well, I'm going to give you some stats around that. The headline is, poverty is higher now than at pre-pandemic levels. In 2022, we saw a rise in Canada's official poverty rate. The Main Street Foundation has just put out a report. It shows that the number of people in poverty has grown since 2019. And the problem we know from this report is not isolated to one particular group or sector. It is impacting everyone in society. So stop for a moment and just think of the people in your orbit. At least one of those people is impacted by poverty. This number now also includes more than ever people who are working. So on top of that, so set that aside for a moment, then on top of that, we have a social service system. Most of us in this room will pay into it in some way, but it is not even meeting the basic needs right now. of life, especially when you add on top of that inflation and housing costs. So we have higher than ever poverty levels, everybody is impacted, housing costs, inflation costs, a system we pay into that is not meeting the basic needs, and how does that feel? It feels heavy, and that's the point of the conversation that we're going to bring in Angie. Angie, can I invite you to come up? I'm going to ask you some questions, which is my favorite thing to do. So come on up, Angie. So congratulations. I mean, I've said this to you before, but with the microphone on, congratulations on your book. I'm excited for you. I'm proud of you. I've just outlined a lot of statistics, a lot of numbers that can feel very overwhelming. And you look at that and you think, well, I'm putting in the money and I care, but what do I do? So if you're feeling overwhelmed, first of all, why the book? Why did you write this book?
Yeah, so I think I wrote it because that's how people feel. And during the pandemic, I had this experience where so many people reached out to me, even people that I hadn't seen for over a decade. And they were like, Ange, what's going on? Right? Because it was all over the news and it was so clear that the disparity had grown. And people didn't really realize that the poverty, the spotlight was really shown on it during the pandemic. And as I sought to answer these questions and to have these conversations with people, what was really clear to me is that there's not a lot of good information out there to help you know what to do. And that's what they wanted to know. What can I do that would make a real difference? And I found that what we do as a sector is we tend to do two things, one of two things. We will tell you sad stories. And now you're sad. And you don't know what to do, right? You still don't know what to do. We haven't answered the question. And the next thing we do is we give you overwhelming statistics. So now you're sad. And you're overwhelmed. And you still have no idea what to do. And so the book is really the answer to that. The idea, the genesis of creating this book was to put something really practical in people's hands so that they would figure out what to do.
All right. You make the claim in the book that we can eliminate poverty. It's a very bold statement. Some people could say that's a naive statement. What's your response to that?
I hear that people laugh at me all the time. It's okay. I take it. It does feel that way because of what I just said. We have all these overwhelming statistics that we hear all the time, and so we can't help but feel overwhelmed after that, and feel like it's impossible. But if this was any other problem, like if I go back to my business days, if this was a business problem, you would figure out the numbers, right? You'd look at your city, and you'd say, okay, how many people are poor in Toronto? Well, prior to the pandemic, it was 532,000 people living under the low-income measure after taxes. Okay, that sounds like a lot. I used to work internationally. That's not a lot. And then you go, there's 2.5 million people in Toronto. All right, so that's a lot more than the people that are poor. And then you look at that number and you break it down further. Well, how many of the people in that number shouldn't be there? And so there needs to be a different solution. So what I mean by that are seniors and individuals with disabilities, which means that they are unable to work. They should just not be in that number. That's a dignity issue. That's an issue we need to address. It's all over the news right now. And we need to care for those vital neighbors. Let's pull them out of the numbers. That's a different conversation. The next is a group of people in the numbers that are experiencing episodic poverty. That's life stuff. We all kind of always have that because there's life. So you get sick, you need support, you get better, you go back to work. You lose your job, you need retraining, you do that, you go back to work. We'll always need supports for people who are episodic poverty. But let's take that aside for a second. The poverty I think we don't need to accept is the rest. It's the generational poverty. It's the people who've been, their grandparents are on social assistance, they're on social assistance, children on social assistance. It's just entrenched, and it's not because they're not able to work or that they don't have dreams. There's other circumstances holding them trapped in poverty. That's what I'm calling generational poverty. And the numbers are really hard to get right, so please nobody, hold my feet to the fire on this because of the way that records are kept. But I'm guessing it's about 350,000 people as an educated guess. So let's go back to, is this impossible? 2.5 million people in this city, 2 million of which are not poor, 350,000 people who need someone to believe in them. So if 350,000 of the 2 million decided to do something, that's only 15 to 18% of the rest of the city. I know, because YSM is a community-run organization, where our volunteer ratio to staff is 12 to 1, that there are at least 350,000 people in the city that already care. We just have to help them know how to go about it.
This is why I love this book and about the book. I can see on the front, I know everything you do, Angie, is with great intention. I know that your jacket matches your book.
And my toes.
Toenails, I saw the toenails, I was very impressed with the lavender toenails. You do everything with great intention. And so why the flower on the cover of this book?
So, when you work with people who are experiencing poverty alongside them, which is what I've been doing for a long time now, you realize that we're all the same. We're human beings. We have the same needs. We have the same desires. We have the same dreams. There's no difference between us. And so the purple of the flower is kind of to capture that. Purple's the color of royalty. You know, it's the idea that we're all the same. We all have a tremendous value. And the difference is this. Some of us have our feet planted in concrete. Some of us grew up with rich soil. And that's the reason that some of us are stuck. And the reason that we need to value the people who are among us, our neighbors, whose feet are planted in concrete, and come alongside them and just kind of break some of their way and give them the opportunity to pursue their dreams, because that's what they want to do.
I love that. Thank you for sharing the story of that. I'm going to give you an opportunity to share a little bit more about how we can help people be unstuck, how we can just act, how we can do our part and be part of those numbers that you were talking about. So I'm going to let you take it away from here. Thanks, Angie. I mean, I have more questions, but I'm going to let you go.
All right. Well, thank you, Emery. And thank you all for being here. I'm so thrilled that you're here. It really means a lot to me that you took time out to come downtown, because who wants to come downtown these days? Let's face it. And talk about this really important subject. I'm excited because I'm hoping that this is the beginning of us deciding to do something really great together. I said to Emery earlier that I believe that we can turn this around. There's enough of us to turn this around. But the other thing I also believe very strongly is that we can do something that will have generational impact, like not just a little thing. We each have something that we can do that would have generational impact. And to illustrate why I believe that, I want to tell you the story of a woman named Barbara. Barbara was the oldest of 11 children. Her father was an alcoholic, and he abused the boys and girls in different ways. At a very young age, though, she was a great student and loved studying. She was taken out of school to go to work to help provide financially for the family and to care for and raise the younger siblings, which she did. She did a good job. And then she wanted a family of her own as time passed. She went about this in a way that was, because of her brokenness, not the best for her or anybody else, but it did result in her having 3 children with 3 different men, and being in a situation where she was living in social housing and on social assistance, struggling with depression and agoraphobia, which means she was afraid to leave the home, raising these 3 children. Doesn't sound very hopeful, does it? Right? I mean, what's going to happen to those kids? And some people might even think, well, maybe she just wants to be like that. Maybe she just wants to live off the system. Those are the kinds of things we think. Well, this is why I believe everybody in this room can do something. Because into Barbara's story stepped 2 ordinary people that changed everything. The first person was a piano teacher. So Barbara always wanted her daughters to take piano lessons, and she scraped up the money for her eldest daughter to do so. And so off her daughter went to piano lessons. And the piano teacher thought, something's a little hinky here, a little girl showing up, and parents, what's going on? And so reaches out to get to know Barbara. And because this person, this piano teacher, was just wired as a caregiver, she got to know Barbara, and she started to invest and understand, and she started to help her find healing in her faith and to find other resources that she could access that would help the family. So now Barbara starts to believe that she may have some value and that her life could change, and she starts to think about ways to change it. And in the course of doing that, she finds another neighborhood for the family to live in. Still social assistance and all that, but just a better neighborhood. So off they go to the other neighborhood. In comes person number 2. Person number 2 is Pat. Pat is the parent of a little boy that played with Barbara's son. At this point, Pat meets a more hopeful Barbara, who's saying, I'd kind of like to go back to work, but I'm afraid and I don't know how. And so what does Pat do? She listens to her and she says, okay, well, what do you like to do? And what are you good at? And, and so this conversation starts, and then it turns into identifying something, identifying courses she can take to get qualified. And when all that is said and done, Pat hires Barbara. So do you see that? You see that transition? We go from, hidden and hopeless, raising 3 children, to confidently leaving the house every day and going to work and providing for her family. Because 2 regular people did something that they thought was no big deal. They really did, because it was what they had to give, right? And Pat couldn't have done what the piano teacher did, and the piano teacher couldn't have done what Pat did. They each did their own thing in their own way, in their own time, and it transformed Barbara's life. It was not small. It was very, very big. And it's bigger than you think, because Barbara was my mother. I'm the eldest daughter. And so the impact of Pat and the piano teacher's choice to see, listen to, understand, and invest and believe in my mother didn't just change her life, it changed her 3 children's life, it changed the life trajectory for her 5 grandchildren, and the change will go on. These simple things that they thought were nothing, helping her figure out what job she might want to do, which classes to take, have a generational impact. And everybody in this room can have that kind of impact. And we all have something that we can do that could lead to that. And it's as simple as us choosing to believe in people, and the system, frankly, choosing to believe in people and provide a gradual pathway for progress so that they can pursue their dreams. And for us to step in and believe in people until they start to believe in themselves and hope again. So, how do we get started, right? The first thing is, we have to think about the fact that poverty, most of us don't understand it these days unless you're in it. And that's fair. If you're not exposed to it, you understand it. And you can't solve a problem you don't understand. So the book really spends time answering people's questions about poverty so that we can understand it before it moves into us figuring out what we can do. So I'd like to tell you another story from the book to help us understand what poverty looks like today, because it has changed dramatically from the time when my mother experienced it. So I'm going to tell you the story of Melissa. Melissa is one of our lived experience leaders. She co-chairs one of our Half Poverty working groups working on increasing access to community supports. And she's an incredibly strong woman. And she is investing in making a difference for people like her because she's still experiencing the challenges. She currently receives Ontario Disability Support Payments, so that's ODSP. And when we were first kind of getting into this work, Melissa was in the process of really trying to get custody of her daughter back, working really, really hard towards that end. And when she got it, we all rejoiced. It was like a party. It was amazing. She worked so hard and she got access for her daughter. And then she wanted to make it even harder, right? She's more motivated. So she wants to work harder so that she can get enough income to provide for her daughter's school supplies, which is great. And she did that until she had her check-in appointment with her case manager for ODSP. And that person said to her, Melissa, you earned too much money last month. We're going to claw back 50% of it from your social payments. Let that sink in. Who pays a marginal tax rate of 50% in this room? No? Like that's, yeah, it's like, it's not good. And it took the wind out of her sails. It would take the wind out of any of our sails. And so I'd like to show a little slide right now, and it is what the social system looks like. And it's kind of hard to read up here, but it's a lot easier to read in the book, don't worry. The short story is, it shows how our social assistance payments have gone down over the decades. And at this point, depending on the size of your family and the kind of support that you're receiving anywhere between 20 to 60% below the poverty line as your benefit. Below the poverty line, which is supposed to be the minimum amount you need to live on. And so what does that do? That puts people in survival mode, right? When you think about it, they're like, every day, what meal do I skip? What bill do I pay? How do I get by? How does this work? And all of the energy that goes into making life work consumes everything. It's so hard to think next week, next month, next year. How can you think that far if you still got to figure out what you're going to eat today? And that's what the system does to people. And so it has changed. It's a different environment that people are functioning within, and it's important for us to understand that. It's also important to understand when we think about this, who is watching this happen? Melissa's daughter is watching this happen. And what's she learning? She's learning it doesn't matter how hard I work, I can't change my life. How will that influence the choices she makes in school and in life if something doesn't change? That's where generational poverty comes from. That's how people's feet get stuck in concrete. And that's what we can change. Because I believe the solution to all of this is us just choosing to believe in people like Melissa and people like my mother, and being there to support them, and leveraging the skills that we have to make the kind of change that gets rid of the concrete. So how do we get started? It's easier than you think, okay? Because I know that's a lot, right? We're overwhelmed. I just did that thing. I just made you sad and overwhelmed, so we're going to get back up again and get positive. So the first thing that we can do is I want to talk about what this looks like on a large scale. So I'm going to tell you a really quick story from Anne of Green Gables. Anybody know what Anne of Green Gables is?
Yes.
So Anne with an E, the new rendering in the first season episode of what this could look like at the community level, where there was a fire in the community. And in this show, everybody just flocked to where the fire was, and there was an old-fashioned bucket brigade, right, where they fill it with water, and they pass it along, and then they pour it on the fire and put it out. And there were people standing around the family members, and they were putting blankets around them and comforting them and talking about who could billet them because it was a rather large family. And then they were talking about, after the fire was out, how they would rebuild the house. So in this very short snippet, you had complete resolution of a crisis, right? You know, remediation, dealing with the fire, supporting the family during their homelessness, rebuilding the house, restoring them back to where they belong. And everybody went. Like, nobody said, no, not my problem. They all went. And it's not because they all liked each other, because it was really clear in the episode that they didn't all like each other. Let's just be honest about that. But they did it because they saw that we exist in community. And when somebody's house is on fire, you put it out. And so the idea here is that we all have something in our bucket, right? And we could be like Pat, we could be like the piano teacher, we could be the person who puts out the fire, we could be the person who billets, we could do different things. And so the Just Act cycle then helps us go from, okay, I want to help, but what can I do? What's in my bucket? How do I actually step into this very practically? And if we look at the cycle, it starts with building a team. So get a couple people to do it with you, even if you're going to decide to do different things or do it with your organization. And then the first step is reflection. And the point of the reflection is to determine what you most care about. Who do you want to help? Who are you most passionate about helping? Sorry, feel a cough coming up. It happens. Excuse me. So then after you do that, you take a time, you stop to learn, take a beat, go learn. What are the real needs of the people that you want to help? And you go spend some time learning that. And that is what I rested my voice all day. Learning what really matters, what do they need? What would actually be most helpful? Listen to the Melissas, listen to the Barbaras. What do they need? And once you do that learning, then you go and do a personal inventory. So it's not just time or money. We have abilities and expertise, we have influence, we have assets and resources that we can leverage to help people. When you hear the panel, you're going to hear from someone who's leveraging their influence to try to change the system. You're going to hear from someone who's helping people get jobs. It's all different kinds of things. So once you have those two things, the highest priority needs and what's in your bucket, you develop a plan. It's very dramatic, very dramatic. You develop the plan, and then it could look something like, I'm gonna mentor a single mom for a year and meet periodically. And success will look like her making progress against her goals. Whatever your plan is, you then just do it. You just pick up your bucket and go. And that's what this could look like as a community as we try to transform it. And I don't think the best thing about this is that you don't need permission. And that's the idea behind this book. I don't think that the piano teacher or Pat looked around and said, am I allowed to help Barbara? Right? They just did it. And we can do that. So can you imagine this city in 20 years, in a generation, if 350,000 of us picked up our buckets and helped one of those 350,000 people? I can imagine it. And I think that the children of those people would look like myself, charity executive, my brother, an elevator mechanic, my sister, a project manager for a construction management firm, right? Working, having families, thriving, contributing to society. It would look like the kind of city we all want to be a part of creating. That's what it would look like. And all it takes is for us to pick up our bucket and just act. Thank you.
That was great. I'm going to get everybody to say those two words because I want you to remember them throughout the course of the evening and even beyond. The two words are just act. Front row, A++. All the rest of you, the two words that I want everyone to remember are just act. Absolutely. You know what I love about your personal story, Angie? Was that it illustrates what you put on this cover. So your mom was Barbara. She's stuck in the cement. And she had a Pat and a piano teacher that came along. And I look at you, and I look at what you're doing in the city, and I look at your kids, and I think about your family, and I think that is the impact. That is the lived experience of having watched people just act, which is why I love that you put it into books. And you've made it possible, and we've got 3 different sectors that we want to talk to in our panel this evening that sort of demonstrate qualities and elements of the book so you can see what it looks like in real life. I want to call up our panelists, and as I do and as I read your introduction, if you want to come up and take a seat, would be great. First is Wilson Yang. He's the owner and operator of the Chick-fil-A franchise on Yonge, Toronto. He's been part of Chick-fil-A for the majority of his career. He held several corporate leadership roles before becoming a franchise owner. His generosity goes beyond the membership and the careers provided to his staff. They've been longtime partners of the Yonge Street Mission. They've provided donated food, funding, and job opportunities. And if you've had some of the cookies this evening, then that's where we'll sit. Next up, we've got, feel free to applaud. Sitting next to Wilson, we have Robert Hilton. He has been acquainted with Yonge Street Mission for a number of years. He is a courageous community leader. He is an example of resilience to his friends, to his family, some of them are here tonight, and to his colleagues. He's an entrepreneur, and with lived experience, as a lived experience leader, Robert has lived through significant life challenges. But he now serves his community in multiple ways, including as the co-chair of the Income and Benefits Hack Poverty Working Group, convened and supported by Yonge Street Mission. Robert, welcome to the panel. Last but not least, ZOE Alliance is the executive director of First Work. It's an Ontario-based membership organization. And I love this, and I love hearing from you on this, because it brings together the best providers of employment services, business leadership, academia, and government that are committed to advancing healthy employment ecosystems. So basically what that means is that organization acts as a bridge between job seekers and employment opportunities. And they advocate at all levels of government in Ontario. She has a deep understanding of how our systems are working and how they're not working. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And that works for job seekers and for communities as a whole. So I'm really excited to get into our discussion panel. Welcome. If you're closest to me, Wilson, you get the first question, all right? Can you guys still hear me? 1, 2, yeah. You own and operate, as we mentioned, this Chick-fil-A at Yonge and Bloor. You're known for giving back, not just cookies at events like this, but you give back in really big and significant ways. Donations, employment, gifts in kind, food, personal volunteering, and it really illustrates what Angie's written about in the book in chapter 12, where businesses create their own Just Act plan. So you take that idea and you share it with your team. Angie had talked about that as one of the steps, find your team. Can you tell us a little bit about why you're motivated to help people in your particular circumstances that led you to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that introduction. I feel like that is way bigger than who I actually am. So
there are no small acts. Angie was just telling us that there are no small acts.
Yeah. So why? Why am I so motivated to help people? I think it's simple, but it's really profound. At some points in my life, people invested in me. People saw a young individual with the potential to potentially change the world, or at least the social sectors and spheres that I was involved in. And so that's really what really motivates me. There's 2 or 3 people I'd like to highlight tonight that really invested in me. Growing up, not many people would actually realize that I actually spent some time in a shelter home due to domestic violence. So my mom, my brother, and I spent about 2 years just all across Tennessee, just bouncing back and forth, just trying to find a very suitable and stable environment to live in. And it wasn't until we found Shepherd's Arms Rescue Mission that really kind of started to stabilize my teenage years. Fast forward a little bit, got into high school and got into music, and I was actually playing the cello, and it's just really cool that music really connected and did some transforming work in our lives, Angie. It was really cool to kind of make that connection.
Maybe sometime we can have you play together.
Yeah.
Yes!
Play cello. Yes! And just like, not tonight.
Exactly. And so I even remember the first time I learned how to tie a tie. It was at an orchestra concert, and my orchestra director here at Wilkes reached out and said, "Hey, I've got a tie for you. You got a button-up shirt, let's put it on." And that was just really meaningful because he was a father figure to me. So I decided to actually go to the University of Georgia and study music education because music had actually made a huge impact in my life, and wanted to give back through teaching music. Long story short, that changed. I ended up pursuing an opportunity with Chick-fil-A. So in 2013, I graduated university and decided, hey, let's check out the quick serve industry. And moved up to Durham, North Carolina, and that's where my former operators spent 4 years investing in me, developed me, taught me about leadership and the inner workings to the restaurant industry. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today, right? Because I moved up here with my wife in 2019 to start Chick-fil-A Yonge and Bloor, and it was the people in my life that saw someone, took a bet on me, and decided, hey, let's invest in this person. So that's why I did that.
Thank you for sharing your story. I love it. I always appreciate when people choose to tell their personal stories about their why, because I think it helps to connect people to the work that you're doing. We talked about how you do this as a business as well. There's mentorship involved, training involved, and I'm curious how it has, you're a business guy first, and bottom line matters. And so how it's impacted not only your business, but also the rest of your team that you've brought alongside that share some of these goals and they're working towards them with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does stem from the purpose. It does stem from the why. And at the end of the day, I think we have a philosophy, at least at my restaurant, that when you put people first, the profits will come. When you put people first, the team members that work so hard for you and serve the guests with the exceptional service, the quality food, it really will affect the bottom line. And just a quick story. So I have a team member who's been with me for a little over 3 years now, and she started out as a team member and decided she wanted to become a certified trainer, teach new team members what she knows, and then she's also turned into a shift leader now. And so she graduated university recently, and she sent me a message and said, hey, I really want to start a mentorship opportunity with you because you mentioned it in orientation 3 years ago. I want to take you up on that offer. So we really started this journey to better understand, okay, how do you have a holistic approach to your life, both professionally and personally. And so what ended up happening was we learned how to do a budget. We learned how to have an emergency fund. We learned how to have 3 to 6 months worth of savings. And she sent me a message about 2 months ago and said, had it not been for some of these mentorship and these courses, Wilson, I would be homeless. Because recently we got kicked out of our condo because they're having to renovate it or they're scraping it down and building something new. And I would not have first and last month's rent if we did not go through this budgeting and this financial literacy course. And so that's just one example of just the impact that you can have as a business owner when you invest in the people that are working so hard for you. And it turns out, it affects retention. It affects your turnover rates. Training costs can add up whenever you have to employ new team members every 6 months. And so it really is good business practices when you start to not look at your team members as an expense, but an investment. So that's really what I would kind of leave from a business perspective.
I saw Robert and Akosua both nodding at a lot of the things that you had to say. Robert, I want to bring you to this conversation next. You're currently a small business owner and you give back to your community by helping others in need, and you're working on ways to improve how our system of social supports works through the income and benefits hack poverty working group. So you're giving lived experience and knowledge and insight and leadership. But you had a difficult journey that included incarceration and homelessness. So can you share about the key steps in your journey through employment and starting a business? How was all of that even possible?
Well, because of my incarceration, I have no problem finding jobs. It's keeping the jobs that was the problem. As soon as an employer would find out my criminal history, they would let me go. So I've had very good jobs, but it just never lasts because of this thing hanging over me. So I decided, what am I going to do? I think maybe I need to do something on my own. So yeah, I just decided to make a conscious decision. I was going to start my business, and so I went to school and learned to cook and got my certificates, and but I still had some issues around technology. So I had friends, in my community and the agencies, and yeah, they helped me along doing computer courses and
And there's so much administration that goes with starting your own business. So much paperwork.
Oh my God. Yeah, many times, I had the notion to, what I get myself into, but I just kept, I had an agenda, and I wanted to stop that cycle of poverty in my life. I wanted my, to give my kids something to look forward to, and and not only that, but just have also a sense of accomplishment, you know. So yeah, I give back to the community. I do volunteer work. I just do random street food. You know, I just drop in and set my tent up, just depending on how I feel at the time. And sometimes it's a 2-course meal, sometimes it's a 3-course meal. You know, I give out hats, scarves in the wintertime, you know, gloves. You know, usually it comes out of my own pockets, you know what I mean, socks, things that I think people actually need, and it does a great deal.
Robert, can I ask you, did you ever, I mean, this is the journey of a lot of entrepreneurs where they get to this point where they feel like giving up, where it seemed a bit like the system was working against you, sort of take one step forward, 2 steps back?
I felt like giving up many, many times, but looking at the people who are there in my corner, you know what I mean, and just the mere fact of starting, I just can't. It wasn't an option. You know, I just had to just keep pushing on and make the best of whatever the situation was.
Is there somebody in your life that helped you along? I know Wilson had people that helped him along, and so did Angie and her mom Barbara.
Yes, there's a few people that helped me. My friend of mine, Tanya, she was incredible. Okay, she was very patient with me. I've tried, you know, taking computer courses, and you know, instructors get a little bit teased off when you're not getting, you know, the lessons, and you know, but she was not that. She was very patient, and she was determined for me to understand what she was teaching me, and I picked it up. I picked it up very well, and used it for my best ability in filling out forms, doing researches, you know. It was, yeah, I felt like giving up a few times, but as I said, it was not an option.
Yeah, you had lots of good things to motivate you, including your family.
My family is, yeah, big time. You know, my daughter, my sons, they are always there when I called on them, you know, to do an event. You know, I never had an issue. Nobody ever really turned me down. And they saw what I was, they saw what my end result was. They knew that I wanted to stop this cycle of poverty in my family and help others in the meantime.
Also, I want to bring you, thank you, Robert, for that as well. And I'm glad you didn't give up. We're all glad you didn't give up.
Thank you.
I saw you nodding several times when Robert was talking, especially in the pieces where the motivation is there, the desire is there, but then the barrier of like the paperwork comes or the systems comes. I mean, anybody who knows, if you've ever had to apply for anything, you know, no offense to anybody in politics here, but when you try to apply for things through the government, it can be confusing and tedious, and it can make you want to give up because you think you get so far and you get somewhere else. So, of course, I want to ask you about the systems. We alluded to this before, systems that work, and then sometimes they necessarily aren't working. Where are we at right now? What is and what isn't working?
Yeah. I'll start off by saying our system as a whole is old. It is siloed in so many different ways. When folks need help, it's hard to find because it's so dispersed. And so knowing where to go for housing, knowing where to go for jobs and employment sometimes gets tricky. That being said, the system is also built on and there's stigma in the system. The idea that as soon as you get the help, you're gonna turn around really quickly. No one, and I'm sure people in this room will acknowledge that your life is a journey. It is not linear. There are steps, it's gradual, and it's incremental, and you get there slowly. But our system is not built for incremental change, and it cuts you off. And this is where the lack of system is built. When Robert says he tries to move forward, but there's a lot of other things that are like, oh, well, you're doing well, let me just claw back some of that social assistance, right? So we're built on a system where there's a stigma built in that individuals, and you know, need to overly monitor and create lots of admin burden and oversight, because there are people that are going to dupe the system. There are lazy people that stay on the system for a long time, when that is not the case. A lot of the time, the system acts as a barrier against you, right? When your social service system is supposed to be accessible to all, the people serving it, and I know this from being the Association for Service, like Employment Service Providers, there are so many guidelines in terms of who they can serve. They need to meet 14 out of the 16 barriers in order to get service. But I like to think that if I needed help, I could go in and get the service where I need it, when I need it.
So this assumption of laziness is actually probably just rooted in frustration of people trying to get forward and then eventually just having to give up because they've got to be able to move on with what they're doing. There is money in the system. We know that because we pay it. So we know that there's money in the system. So the money is there. And as Angie pointed out before, everybody can agree this is a problem that we don't want to see exist. So where do we need to move the money around to, or where does the change need to come in?
Yeah, I'd like to point out, because we do a lot of evidence-based research and then do a lot of studies when it comes to where we're seeing the money flow, and the money is often stuck in the monitoring and oversight of agencies and bodies, that it doesn't really trickle down to frontline in terms of support, right? We haven't seen, and I know I've MVP long time. I know, like she's been. I've heard really great conversations, right? Because you're not in power yet, as one day. You know, but to highlight this, when there's a focus there, and you haven't seen incremental change for people to actually serve, right, and be that support system. That money needs to just trickle down a little further. It needs to trickle down to service delivery, right? Because more people need to be able to walk in and get the support they need when they need it. And the one thing I would say from like a taxpayer perspective is all of us pay taxes. All of us pay a lot of taxes. So the idea that your taxes are going towards something that you could and would use when you need it would be ideal. So a lot of the things that I would like to, can I leave the audience with it right now? I would like to leave the audience with is, like, question where your money is going when it comes to social services. You don't always think of a social services as something you would need, but oftentimes you're just arm's length away from someone that used it, has been a part of it at some point, and has a definite story to tell. Understanding that you don't know everyone's story, but you're supporting them in some way possible. And I love that you brought up more like the why. The why is so important, because understanding that why and destigmatizing, sharing the hard times, the tough times, helps enable folks to really see where they can actually ask for help, ask for support, and you never know where you can find it.
Thank you. Morgan, what do you think? I'm going to quickly wrap up our panel, Robert, and give you the last word. You know, we've heard a lot about people just acting. You're just acting by being here tonight about the work that you're doing. Could you leave some encouragement for people who are thinking, how can I be a Tanya?
Well, yes. I think we're all a Tanya. We're all a Tanya. We just don't know it. I think we just need to look inside ourselves a little bit and see what we have inside of ourselves that we can actually give out to another person, because we all can be beneficial to each other in some way, you know, and that's what we need to do. We need to look inside ourselves and find that we are able to make changes. We are able to, even it doesn't take a lot, it's a little thing. It's a little thing that matters, you know, because when we speak about Tanya, you know, the things that Tanya do, she does it on a whim. But to me, it's enormous. It's like huge.
Yeah.
But to her, it's like nothing. So we all can do so much to help this situation, and I think we all need to just act.
Before we have the panelists go back to our seats, and then we're going to hear from Paula, I just wanted to ask you, you've lived this experience, you know that even a small act has a huge ripple effect, big change. You are an example of that. You're the CEO of Yonge Street Mission. You've written this amazing book. You've done so much in the city. And it started with piano lessons. So what is your dream for the city?
So my dream for the city is that we would all come to a place of actually living out a belief that everybody is of incredible value, even if their feet are stuck in concrete. And that would lead to a movement of people helping others, which would lead to the kind of city we all really want to live. That's my dream.
Your seats, because I know you're going to want to sit there to enjoy this next segment that we have coming up. Andy, thank you too, which is Paula Reed. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
What I find the common thread with everybody's story is that it was something small, something that seemed insignificant to them, helping with a piano lesson, teaching somebody how to tie a tie. Little things like that, knowledge that you already have, knowledge that's there to give and to share so easily has a huge change and impact. Think about it as you're listening to this final presentation tonight. What little things do I have that could potentially mean a big impact on people, and then just act? I'm really excited about the finalist of this evening, that is Paula Reed. Paula is a Toronto-based poet and spoken word artist who is passionate about advocacy and social justice. In addition to her 20 years of experience in creating and performing spoken word, Paula has had the privilege of working as a facilitator, a panelist, a keynote speaker, and performer, plus I learned tonight that she's also a really great cook, at a variety of events right across the city of Toronto and internationally. She's developed courses, lectured at academic institutions on mental health. Paula's spoken word art provides a memorable opportunity for audiences to more deeply connect to advocacy. Having overcome tremendous personal obstacles, Paula vulnerably reflects on her knowledge and how it permeates into her passion for advocacy. Ladies and gentlemen, Paula Reed.
Thank you. As Angie was speaking, there was this song that began playing in my mind, and a part of it says, "You don't know my pain, what I had to go through to get here. You'll never understand my praise. Don't try to figure it out." Now I like this song, but that part, I'm going to ask you to try for a second to figure it out. This piece is called "Child Be Guided into the Light." It was not many years ago, though it feels like a whole other lifetime, when at the intersection of mental illness, institutional failings, family breakdown, and generational poverty, you'd find a young, homeless, hopeless me. First night on the streets at only 15, I was entrapped in a cycle of couch surfing, shelter hopping, and sleeping on the streets. Pretend my words are a ride share for a moment and take a ride with me. Buckle up, because we'll be traveling at top speeds. The streetlights are all out, but this is a vivid analogy. Here we are looking back at roads I've traveled before that seemed like places I'd never been. Like my life is a roundabout that only leads right back to where it began. This car is ill-equipped to drive on rough terrain, but that's where it keeps ending up, on E, overheating, and the engine is coughing instead of purring. I'm nowhere near a garage or even a gas station. Where does this end? Failure of the transmission or a deadly collision? I'm falling asleep at the wheel. I'm exhausted, tired of fighting, tired of pushing, tired of trying, tired of proving over and over that I cannot get to any destination beyond where I am, lost again. I keep telling myself, one more mile, one more turn, one more street, one more try. I try this, try that, try here, try there. Every day it gets more and more difficult to listen to that voice because the one that says, just stop, give up, is joined by the screeching of my reality. You see, my eyes had adjusted to the poor visibility. I was desperately in need of someone to help me see things differently. Thank you to the one that lighted the way back to salvation, Auntie Rosemary. May you rest in eternal peace. To my teachers and mentors, my team of MVPs, for taking time to mentor and share their wisdom with me, for providing guidance, sharing hope, seeing possibility. They were there with a vision of who I could be. Their support, love, and light realigns me. To all those who are able and willing to ride along in a jalopy, a single choice to do one simple act can reroute a life and get someone back on track. Look at me, because it's really just as simple as that.
I was talking to Paula upstairs earlier, and I was like, Angie's very excited about this, and I was really excited about it too. And Paula's like, listen, Paula, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Even more than what I was expecting, and such impact, every single word. Thank you so much. Speaking of words, I'm going to invite Angie to read the final 2 chapters of Just Act. We've got a little bit over time, but I think it's important to hear from Angie, the work and the heart that she's put into this book. And while she makes her way to the stage, I just want to remind you of a couple logistical things. Please stick around afterwards. Chat with Angie, talk to our panelists, ask some questions, pick up some books. Also, if you are feeling motivated to just act, you can check out the YSM table, find out ways that you can be involved and start getting motivated, start acting on the plans and the thoughts that are bubbling around in your mind. And we also, again, want to encourage you to pick up a book, one for yourself, one for somebody else, make that part of your bucket that you're going to pick up and help other people and put that plan into action. Final words, Angie, to you from your book, Just Act.
It's amazing that she's so good. All right, so the last 2 paragraphs of the book.
Yes.
I have a final suggested assignment for you. If you're game, I'd like you to close your eyes and picture the people that you want to support. Now imagine the same people 5 years from now, studying or working, earning good income, making progress. Look at the way they walk taller, engage in life with confidence, and even laugh more. Now fast forward to 10 years from now. What do their children look like? What are they able to do now that they would not have been able to do had it not been for their parents' life changing so dramatically? Imagine what they would say to you if they knew it was you who would help their mom or dad make that change. Draw a picture of this. Or write it down and put it somewhere visible. This is your vision. This is what you want to be a part of creating in society. It is the why of your Just Act. Believe me, others will be inspired by
They will join you. And this is how a grassroots movement that fundamentally changes society is made. This is how we can become a generation that turn the tide and create a path toward inclusive growth and a just society where all people alone can thrive. It's time. Grab your bucket and let's go.
Connect with people, talk about your ideas, and thank you all again for coming out tonight. For the rest of the weekend.
Bottles everywhere. I didn't get my own bottle. Look at this. She's got her own name.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on all our social media platforms. And if you need more information, go to our website.